For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind, and write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins, and their iniquities will I remember no more. In that he saith a new covenant, he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away.
According to the Holy Scriptures, Yahweh Shai, the Son of the Most High, is set to bring immortality to the nation of Israel, the elect, via establishing the tabernacle of David, as we talk about the second coming of who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. He is coming to take down this current world ruled by Esau, Edom, and establish a righteous kingdom, which is synonymous with the throne of David. That's scriptural, which is a government that's going to run this world in righteousness.
But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind, and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins, and their iniquities will I remember no more. In that he saith a new covenant, he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Shai. All right, and what we're going to get into today is to continue on in the book of 2 Samuel. All right, we're at the chapter 11. All right, and it goes into the sin of King David. All right, and this is his infamous sin with Bathsheba when he committed adultery. All right, and had her husband set up her husband Uriah. All right, set up, to be put to death, all right, in war. Okay, so ultimately he conspired to murder, okay, and he committed adultery, all right, which are two sins punishable by death, okay, and the Lord chose to have mercy on him. Now, he didn't go unscathed, he was punished, okay, he was embarrassed, his son, will betray him, okay, so he called help, well, he didn't get the punishment. Okay, there was meat for that action. Just as we we catch hell. We don't go unscathed. We understand that we're Israelites. We come into the understanding. The scriptures say we come into the sweet. Then we deal with the bitter. and that's the Lord putting his hell on us, but we're still not going to get the judgment, Lord will. We of the elect, we of the house of David. We're going to receive the sure mercies of David, and we're not going to get the punishment that's meet for our actions, man. Because just as King David, we're all, worthy, all right, of the death penalty, okay, for our actions, thus far, okay. So the sure mercies of David, play a major factor, okay, in our walk, okay. Now let's get into it. All right, and I'll go to the NLT. Um, all right, so this is Second Samuel, all right, chapter 11 and verse 1. It says, in the spring of the year, when kings normally, all right, go out to war. All right, so you had like a season when they went out to war. Okay, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. They destroyed the Ammonites army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem. So this is the point now. King David, is established, and he's the king of kings at this point, to where he's just sending out his army, to go win battles. He stayed behind. Okay. Now, um, we're going to see, okay, that this idle time, all right, then play in his favor. Okay. Second Samuel 11 and 2 said, late one afternoon, after his midday rest, David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of the palace. As he looked over, all right, out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty, all right, taking a bath. Okay. So it's pretty much like he's on the rooftop, of his palace. Okay. And it says, and he sees Bathsheba. Okay. He says he sent someone to find out who she was, and he was told she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Okay, so he's been told that she's a married woman. Okay, and it says, then David sent messengers to get her, and when she came to the palace, he slept with her. She had just completed the purification rites after having her menstrual period. Then she returned home. Later, when Bathsheba discovered that she was pregnant, she sent David a message saying, I'm pregnant. Then David sent word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. So Joab sent him, all right, to David. When Uriah, when Uriah arrived, David asked him how Joab and the army were getting along and how the war was progressing. Then he told Uriah, go on home and relax. David even sent a gift to Uriah after he had left, all right, the palace. Okay, so now he's trying to cover it up, as he laid with this woman, with Uriah, all right, wife Bathsheba. Okay, and he now was trying to cover up the pregnancy by having Uriah to go home thinking that he was going to go deal with his woman. Okay. It said, but Uriah didn't go home. He slept that night at the palace entrance with the king's palace guard. When David heard that Uriah had not gone home, he summoned him and asked, what's the matter? Why didn't you go home last night after being away for so long? Uriah replied, the ark and the armies of Israel and Judah are living in tents, and Joab and my master's men are camping in open fields. How could I go home to wine and dine and sleep with my wife? I swear that I would never do such a thing. All right. So Uriah, he wanted to stay in a certain mode. He wanted to have that edge. That's why he slept, with the palace guard at the doors of the king. Okay. He didn't want to, he didn't want to go lay up. His mind was at war. Okay. And the scriptures, tell us, that hey, that we have to have a mindset of a soldier in this thing. Matter of fact, let's go here. Now we got women, you can't, neglect your woman, 24/7. All right, but there's periods when, the spirit requires us to tap in. Okay. But Uriah, he wanted to have an edge, showing you that bitterness, is a good thing, in this situation. Now, uh, Second Timothy 2:4. It's in the NLT. It says, soldiers don't get tied up in affairs of civilian life, for they cannot please the officer who enlisted them. Okay, so Uriah wanted to keep his mind in a certain mode of war. Okay, his men was at war. He didn't want to be laid up because Uriah was a high-ranking officer in the military, man, in King David's army. All right, he wasn't just a soldier. He was a high-ranking officer, man. So all he was thinking about is his men's, all right, his men well-being. Okay, the well-being of his men. Okay, because he was a high-ranking officer, so he's responsible for doing everything he can to get those men back home to their families, man. So he didn't want to be laid up with his family, and these men are out at war. His men, okay, they're looking to him for leadership are at war, and he's at home laid up, and that's a great mindset as a leader, So he did, he moved how he moved to stay in the spirit, okay, of war, okay. He didn't get, he didn't go lay up, okay, and wine and dine, okay, which hey, that worked against King David's scheme, and that's why he had to take it, to another level. But it was all set up in the spirit, okay, for the Lord, to show His mercy. All these things are set up in the spirit, and King David was dead wrong. You read this chapter, you like, God damn, you know. But then you look at our life, and it's like, God damn, you know, hey, we all have fallen short, okay, of the glory, okay. But we know King David character, because people try to make, this chapter define King David's legacy. You know, this was just a hiccup, okay. But King David's legacy was that of integrity, honor, you know, faithfulness, okay. But he had a hiccup, you see, and so um, going back into it, it says verse 12, it says, well, stay here today. David told him, and tomorrow you may return to the army. So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day, all right, and the next. Then David invited him to dinner and got him drunk. But even then, he couldn't get Uriah to go home to his wife. Again, he slept at the palace entrance with the king's, all right, palace guard, all right. So Uriah refused, you know, to be comforted by his woman, okay, at this time frame, all right, because he was in the heat of battle. It was the season of war. All right, it says, so the next morning David wrote a letter to Joab and gave it to Uriah to deliver. Then it said the letter instructed Joab, station Uriah on the front lines where the battle um is fiercest, then pull back so that he will be killed. Now Uriah is delivering a letter to Joab about his own death, which lets the type of integrity Uriah had, because of course that letter had the king's seal on it, okay? But this man is delivering a letter, okay, that's conspiring his own death, you know? And like I said, this chapter you read, it just get worse and worse, showing you how, you get caught up in sin, it just gets worse, man. Like immediate repentance, should be the play. Or trying to cover it up, it gets worse to work. It gets worse and worse. It says, so Joab assigned Uriah to a spot close to the city wall where he knew the enemy's strongest men were fighting. And when the enemy soldiers came out of the city to fight, Uriah the Hittite was killed along with several other Israelite soldiers. Then Joab sent a battle report to David. He told his messengers, report all the news of the battle to the king. But he might get angry and ask, why did the troops go so close to the city? And then they know they would be shooting, all right, from the walls. And wasn't Abimelech, son of Gideon, killed at the best by a woman who threw a millstone down on him from the wall? Why would you get so close to the wall? Then tell him Uriah the Hittite was killed too. So they set Uriah up, okay, to be put to death. Because King David being a man of war, he was a strategic, okay, what you call it, a warrior king. Okay, so he understood the ins and out of warfare. All right, and he knew, okay, what would be a bad call. So he calls Joab. He ordered Joab, his nephew, to set Uriah up for failure, man. Okay, it says, so the messengers went to Jerusalem and gave complete report, all right, to David. The enemy came out against us in the open fields, he said, and as we chased them back to the city gate, the archers on the wall shot arrows at us. Some of the king's men were killed, including Uriah the Hittite. Well, tell Joab not to be discouraged, David said. The sword devours this one today and that one tomorrow. So King David, he pretty like, hey, niggas die every day, B. That was his reaction. He said, fight harder next time and conquer the city. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. When the period of mourning was over, David sent for her and brought her to the palace, and she became one of his wives. Then she gave birth to a son, but the Lord was displeased with what David had done. And to this point, David has been in good standings with Yahweh Bashim Shai. He was a man known for excellent, conduct. Okay, until this point. All right, and this is the Lord, brought David, to a low point. All right, and we can learn, from this account. First, King David, he was idle. Okay, he was chilling, kicking it, and he looked at Bathsheba. When he started to operate, in his lust. As you go here to the book of James. All right, and we know this was set up, okay, for the Lord to show mercy. All right, and this is all our story, man. You see, the mercies of King David. Okay, well, just to get a few points from that, as we apply these accounts to our walk today. Okay, this is the book of James. All right, 1:14. It said, temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions. When sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. Okay, and this is why we have to always check that old man, because entertaining that old man, could drag us away, because Satan works through gradualism. Satan gradually, entices us, by the flesh, by lust, and if we entertain these things, then the next thing you know, all right, we're in the action. Okay, which can put us in a terrible predicament, man. Okay, and see, we don't have this mercy. Okay, let's go here. Let's just get a couple points. We don't have this mercy, all right, to use it, as a sin credit card. Okay, the mercies of Yahweh Shai is not meant for us to wild out. Okay, but to appreciate, all right, this grace period, all right, and get better. Okay, this grace period is for us to get better, man. Because we didn't even know, all right, we were sinning. Okay, there's a lot of things that we didn't know we were doing was off. We thought we was okay on point. Okay, matter of fact, let's get this real quick. Proverbs 14. Okay, there's a lot of things we were doing. We had no clue we were sinning. This is Proverbs 14:12. Said, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death, man. Okay, we thought celebrating Christmas was a righteous thing. Easter, celebrating our birthday. We didn't understand these things. Went back to paganism, the things that the Lord hates. Okay, we thought that the adultery was only when a man was married according to Esau's paperwork. All right, we didn't know that the ins and outs of adultery and what it means. Okay, so we were doing things that seemed right, but the end thereof that was leading to death. If we would have stayed on that path, all right, we were dead men walking. Okay, and once we woke up to this thing, all right, just as King David, and you're going to see a different reaction from King David and King Saul. King Saul, you remember 1 Samuel the 15th chapter, he began to justify his wickedness, man. Okay, well, King David, this is when you go here, Psalms 51 and 1, to the chief musician, the Psalm of David, when Nathan the prophet came unto him after he had gone into Bathsheba. All right, so when he went in unto Bathsheba, all right, this is what produced, Psalms 51 and 1. How like some certain artists, they produce, their best music, once they go through certain affliction, in their life, certain things in their life, they produce, the best music, you know. So King David, he produced this song, okay, and begging for mercy. All right. And he's not justifying himself. He understands that he needs mercy. Okay. Psalms 51 and 1, it said, have mercy upon me, O power, according to thy love and kindness, according to the multitude of thy tender mercies. Blot out, okay, my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. So he's taking full accountability. Okay. Verse 3, for I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against thee only have I sinned and done this evil in thy sight, that thou mayest be justified when thou speakest and be clear when thou judgest. Okay? So that he's taking full accountability for his sin. He knows that he's in the wrong. He knows that he's disappointed. All right, Yahweh Bashim Shot. Okay? It says, behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden parts thou shalt make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me to hear joy and gladness, that the bones which thou hast broken, okay, may rejoice. Hide thy face from my sins and blot out all my iniquity. So he's asking, for mercy. He's asking to be pardoned. Okay. And this is what we're doing as we repented, within this grace period. And as we're rehearsing the righteous acts, we're begging the Lord to be pardoned through our conduct. We beg in our prayers as well. All right. And we beg through our conduct of repentance for pardon, man. Understanding that we need to be pardoned. All right. It says, create in me a clean heart, which is a mind, O power, and renew a right spirit within me. And this is our mindset every day. We should constantly, all right, be renewed day by day. As the scripture said in 2 Corinthians, it's a constant process, man. We've never reached a point to where we've arrived, man. We're always fine tuning, in the spirit. Okay. You go here to 2 Corinthians 4 and 16 said, for which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. Fine tuning that inward man day by day, which is the spirit. Because that's the only thing, all right, that's going to be translated into the chariots is our spirits are going to be perfected and they're going to be, all right, merged with these new bodies. All right. Let's get this real quick. This definition. So you go here. All right. So let's get this word fine tune. This definition real quick. All right. So you get this word fine tune. Come on now. There we go. It said fine tune. It says to make small, all right, make small adjustments to something in order to achieve the best or desired performance. Okay, so we're in the process of constantly fine tuning in the spirit. We're making these adjustments in the spirit to achieve the best or desired performance, man. And the desired performance is joint heirs with Yahweh, and for you women to be wives under those men. Okay, that's the desired performance. All right, so we should be constantly fine tuning in the spirit. Okay, to get to that desired, all right, product. okay, and righteousness, man. You see? So going back here to Psalms, all right, 51. Psalms 51 and 10, it says, create in me a clean heart, O power, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from thy presence and take not thy Holy Spirit from me. And remember, King David was, multi-billion at this time. Probably was at the trillion, man. You know, like what our forefathers had, man, that era of King David and King Solomon. These numbers probably don't do justice. Okay, but he could have been at a trill easy. If he had 158 billion, to put into the temple. All right, but he's not asking. Okay, for don't take the riches. Don't take. He's asking. Don't take the spirit from him. Don't cast me not away from thy presence, because King David was dwelling in the presence of the Lord. The scripture keeps saying that the Lord was with David whithersoever he went. So he knew the presence of the Lord, and he didn't want that to disappear. Okay, that was his fear. Like, don't take thy presence from me. You see, because he knew, hey, he can get everything else back as long as he's in the presence of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. His thing was to be pleasing to the Lord. Just as a woman, her mindset would be pleasing towards her husband. To desire, his presence, and it says, restore unto me the joy of thy salvation and uphold me with thy free spirit. Then I will teach transgressors thy ways, and sinners shall be converted unto thee. Okay, and this is what we're doing now, because if we went through our, moment of being broken, which we still go through times of being broken, okay, but it gives us, the experience to be able to teach others. Okay, see, people think that you have to be perfect to tell someone, what to do. Like, you have to have no wrong. No, it's just you done wrong. What you learned, you made the adjustments from your wrong. You done been through the whole process. So now we're able, all right, to speak, as balanced judges, man. As we teach. It said, deliver me from blood guiltiness, O power. Thy power, my salvation, and my tongue shall sing aloud of thy righteousness. O Lord, open thou my lips, my mouth shall show forth thy praise. For thou desires not sacrifice. Because remember, King Saul, what he tried to, he disobeyed, then tried to make a sacrifice. Okay? But Samuel told him, look, you know, rebellion is the sin of witchcraft. The Lord has desire and obedience, all right, rather than sacrifice, man. For thou desires not sacrifice, else would I give it. Thou delightest not in burnt offerings. The sacrifices of the Most High are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart, okay, a broken mind towards sin. O power thou would not despise. Do good in thy good pleasure unto Zion, build the walls of Jerusalem, so he's considering, his people in this, because he understands he's a leader, and it says, then shalt thou be pleased with the sacrifices of righteousness, with burnt offerings and whole burnt offerings. Then shall they offer bullocks upon thine altar. Okay? And it's about getting our mind right, man. And the sacrifices that the Lord is accepting now is obedience. That's a sacrifice, because in this world, obedience is a sacrifice. This is a sinful kingdom. Okay? So obedience, in scripture say, make you a prey. Okay? Obedience in this world to Yahweh Shem Al Shai, all right, is making us eligible to be called terrorists, man. But that's the sacrifice that the Lord is requiring at this time. Okay? And like I said, we have, liberty in Yahweh Shai, but it's not for us to wild out. That's why you get here in Galatians 5 and 13. It says, for brethren, you have been called unto liberty. Only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. Okay, so this liberty we have where we're not under, the threat of imminent death, for breaking the law, is not for us to, toe the line. Okay, and try to figure out what we can get away with. You got Jake that stay mind, stay love the total line and try to figure out, the loopholes to doing what they want to do. No, we should be focused on serving one another in love, man, building each other up in right conduct, man, getting as far away from sin as possible, man. Okay, that should be that's the right way to use this liberty, man. Is to get better. Okay, as Yahweh told the woman, okay, that they brought to him with adultery, would go and sin no more, which that represented Israel as well. All right, as we committed, spiritual adultery, man. Okay, but now that we know better, all right, we do those things no more. Okay, this is First Peter chapter 2. Okay, um, let's see. It might be Second Peter, so this is on Second Peter. Let me see. Let me see. What First Peter? Okay, let's look right over. All right, this is on First Peter chapter 2. All right, I started at 15. Said, "For so is the will of the Most High, that with well doing you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as servants of the Most High." Okay, so we have liberty. Lord willing, we're covered, by the blood of Yahweh, and we're shown those sure mercies of David, because ultimately the Lord showed that he was back in favor, okay, with David through the birth of King Solomon, okay, which ultimately represents the ultimate mercy that will come through Yahweh, the birth of Yahweh, okay, which we'll get into that when we get to that point, okay. But we have this mercy, okay, not for a cloak of maliciousness to try to see what we can get away with, no law, no sin type. Nah, man, we should be, seeking to how we can fine tune to be pleasing to our power, man. Okay, not to please our flesh and not in this liberty, man. Okay, but to focus on being a servant, man, and being occupied and being a servant. That's what keeps us out of a lot of mess too, man. Being occupied, with serving, not serving ourselves, man, but serving others. Being occupied, and that keeps us, uh, from being idle, and keeps us out of the way, you know, of lust, man. Falling weak to lust. This Isaiah 55:1 says, "Hold everyone that thirsty, all right, come ye to the waters, and he that have no money, come ye buy and eat. Yeah, come buy wine and milk without money and without price, man." Okay, so this truth is our people, as the hopeful elect will have a thirst for this truth, man. And it was meant for us, as teachers, to give these things freely as we receive, freely we give, man. It doesn't cost you anything, okay, to come and get this truth, man, to come and be edified, okay. All you have to pay with is your time. You buy this truth with your time, all right. But we're not here to be a burden, try to sell you everything, sell you breakdown, sell you names, sell you prayers, this merchandise, tickets to the Passover. Nah, man. Come get this wine, this wine of Yahweh, and all these living waters without money. Okay, verse 2 it says, "Wherefore do you spend money for that which is not bread, and you labor for that which satisfies not," man. And this is what we spent most of our life doing. Whether we was in the church, all right, whether we were just in the world doing our thing, because you spend actual money and time and things that didn't profit, bread that didn't sustain, which goes into the doctrines of this world, okay, the cultures of this world, okay. It says, hearken diligently unto me and eat that which is good, and let your soul delight itself in fatness, man, because the Lord has just opened up a spiritual buffet in these times, man. Okay. When this live screen goes off, another one will be started, okay, or some new videos will be uploaded, to where you can just buffet on this truth, man, from the time, we wake up to the time we go to sleep, man. Okay. It says, incline your ear and come unto me. Okay. Hear, and your soul shall live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, even the sure mercies of David. Okay. So the Lord is extending the sure mercies of David for the rest of the house of David, man. Okay. Which is the generation of the hopeful elect. So we have to understand mercy has been extended to us, and we should be making the most due of this mercy, man. Okay. You see, we all hope we should fall under the sure mercies of David, man. All right. And that doesn't mean you can wild out, just because you get called out. Now you want the sure mercies of David. Nah, David had a sorrowful mind, a repentful spirit. Okay. He didn't go about it proud, blaming others, trying to justify it. Okay, lie about it. No, hey, he was honest, man. And the Lord showed mercy. He was jacked up, but the Lord showed mercy, man. You see? So, um, yeah, that was the point. Just want to touch on that this morning. All right. So, Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters was edified. Till next time I say shalom. Kwam Yashala, a Bible, Soon, shalom.